I think unity has a lot of force, a lot of strength. We saw the unity of Am Yisrael. We were able to unite. I think we're in a difficult situation at the moment, yet we are able to unite. We have seen it in the past. We saw it after the murder of the 3 boys and the kidnapping of the soldiers, and we would like to unite in the wake of the return of Hadar and Shaul. I think our united pulse and our united demand that they come back home, I think it will do something, both here below and in heaven as well. You know, every time I come for such a discussion, I start thinking, what can I talk to you about? And it's not because I don't have time. You know, in the half hour that was given me, I could say a lot of things. But the question is, how do we really touch upon those problems of essence? What do we represent? And how do we start working? And what we represent in Israeli society, I think there is something out of order. And it's inherent, and I think we have to fix it. And I think we all know it, especially right here in this place. Israeli society still has a lot of trials and tribulations that it will have to face. And the weakness that we find in Israeli society, at least in the leadership of Israeli, I wouldn't say Israeli society, let's say Israeli leadership. I think it's something that's wrong, something that's rotten, that's gone wrong. And in these 10 days, they are called Aseret Yemei Tshuva, the 10 days of Tshuva, of repentance. But I actually see the word Tshuva, or at least this period, as one of introspection, of soul-searching. Soul-searching that becomes personal, then becomes a family soul-searching, and then becomes a national introspection. Because just to do Tshuva and repent, and we all know those slogans, in actual fact, you know, we're at the beginning of the year. We are doing the soul-searching, introspection. We think to ourselves, what have we done, what have we not done in the previous year? And we keep checking, how can we become better next year? What will we do next year? Do we even have the merit to begin the next year? That is how I see it. That is how I perceive those Aseret Yemei Tshuva, the 10 days of repentance. By the way, these 10 days between, I see the same as the 10 days between Pesach and Yom Ha'atzmaut. I think that's also a time of national introspection. And we have to ask, what have we done in the year that has passed? Where have we failed? How can we improve? What can we improve? And that is why I was very happy to be invited, and I was happy to be here. Because all these things are, again, manifest, or maybe can be expressed in this one point, that there is a weakness, at least in the broader sense, when it comes to values, the values that we show our enemies. I think we have to understand this, because Hadar and Oron were killed, and they are being held by the enemy. And in the state of Israel, for 5 years already, the state of Israel has not been successful in bringing them back home. Let me talk a little bit about this point, and about this perception of what it means to bring a soldier to a Jewish grave. Unfortunately, when I talk, in the religious society, National Zionist Society, and Haredi Society, in all these places where I don't even have to talk, I feel that it's there that I have to exert all my energies, because the leadership of these specific religious sectors don't actually take the mitzvah, the main mitzvah, which is bringing back a Jew to be buried in a Jewish grave. I think that is the most important mitzvah. There's no one superior to it. It's called Chesed Shel Emet. It's a true chesed. So if you want, the perspective that is maybe related to this specific geographic location, I think you well know. We'll soon be, finishing the Torah reading. the weekly portion, and right at the end of the book of Dvarim, of Deuteronomy, it is written as follows. It talks about Moshe Rabbeinu, talks about the death of Moshe, and it says, and he was buried in the valley. That is how his death is mentioned. And he buried him in the valley, and all the commentators ask, who buried Moshe? He buried him. Who buried Moshe? What does it mean when the verse says, he buried him in the valley? God buried Moshe. And the question is asked, why is God dealing with the burial of Moshe? And the only answer is that Hashem dealt with the burial of Moshe because Moshe dealt with the burial of Yosef. Moshe Rabbeinu was the man who took the bones of Yosef from Egypt and walked with them for 40 years in the desert to bring them to Jewish burial in Israel. And one can take this midrash and elaborate upon it and show how after Yam Suf, Moshe deals with the bones while the sons of Israel deal with the looting and all the possessions they got. But Moshe is always busy with those bones, responsible for them throughout. That is why it's written that Hashem, that God buried him in the valley, veGaon. So again, who's greater than Moshe, as the Midrash says, because Hashem buried him. God buried him himself, as is written. He buried him in the valley. So this commandment, this position that we have to adhere to, is manifest in a very blatant way with King David. In the book of Shmuel, in Shmuel Bet, it's written there was a famine, a 3-year famine in the times of David, year after year, and David asked God, what will be? And God answered him, because David sees that after he's established his kingdom, there was 3 years of famine. He suddenly sees, why is this happening? It doesn't say that it didn't rain. It says there was famine. Nobody understood where was this famine coming from. Why was there famine? And David asked God, why is this? Why has this come upon us? And in Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer, in the Midrash, there is a wonderful idea learned from this verse. 3 years there was famine in the land of Israel, and it's written it was 1 year followed by another year. Why is it written Shana Achar Shana? 3 years in a row? Because David HaMelech, when he noticed that there was famine, he said, oh, it's probably because of our sin. So during the first year, he sent his representatives, and David said, go, maybe there are idol worshippers among us. That is why the famine has come, because usually famine comes because of idol worshipping. They went, they checked out, they didn't find anyone. They told David, there's no idolatry. David sent them out again during the second year, and he said, go, maybe there is adultery among us. They went out, they checked, they came back, and they said, no, we have not found adultery among us. In the third year, David said, go see that there's no bloodshed, no murderers among us. And they came back and said, no, we didn't find any. Then David, the leader, understood that it's all because of him. It depends on him, meaning there is a problem in himself, in the leader. And then he prays. And then he understands and he finds out that he did not bring Shaul to Jewish burial. He did not bury Shaul. That is why there is famine. So the situation of famine, again, and then this is just a symbolic of anything that suddenly happens, and we don't understand why are things happening. Famine is a situation that represents a lack of something, a shortage of something, a chronic problem that has no remedy. And then David understood and says, immediately the Midrash says, he took all the scholars of Israel at the time, they crossed over the Jordan River, they went to Yavesh Gilad, they found the bones of Shaul and Jonathan, his son. And again, the verse about him, it says, Shomer kol atzmotav, achat mehena lo nishbara. He watches over all his bones. They watched over to make sure none broke. And they did all that the king commanded. What did the king command? He commanded them to bring over the bones, the coffin of Shaul, and to go through all the tribes of Israel. And as the coffin went through, everybody came out and escorted the bones of Shaul because it's chesed shel emet. It's a real chesed. And then they arrived again in the border of Benjamin, and it's written that he was buried in the plot of Benjamin, in the tribe of Benjamin. And after the whole of Israel did this kindness, immediately there was abundance in the land, as the verse goes, and God listened to the people. That was the situation. Meaning, if we do not bury a Jew differently when it comes to a soldier, we are in a situation of famine, meaning we are in a situation of a chronic lack, of a wanting, of a shortage, and we have to take responsibility. Who takes responsibility? The leadership has to take responsibility. This is expressed very beautifully at the end of the war of Bar Kokhba. If you recall, there was a war over the city of Beitar. The Romans killed the fighters of Bar Kokhba in the city of Beitar, and they did not bring them to burial. And after a certain period, they did allow them to be buried. And then it's written in the tractate of Ta'anit, the name of Rabbi Tana, then the bracha of Hatov veHametiv was set. The bracha we say in Birkat Hamazon. I imagine that each one here say it more than once a day. The bracha of Hatov veHametiv in Birkat Hamazon. I can't say it, unfortunately, because I have not brought my son to Jewish burial, so I cannot say it. But the bracha Hatov veHametiv is a bracha that has to do with everyday routine, mundane. We ask for livelihood and success. And we also talk about chesed in that bracha, meaning those who do not bring soldiers to Jewish burial cannot really pray for chesed. We can't bless for chesed because they're in a constant state of famine, of shortage, of hunger. That can only be rectified in one way, as David HaMelech did, as Moshe did, and as we have to do as well. And we haven't done it yet. And this is the current situation. 5 years after what happened to Hadar and Oron. And what has happened in these past 5 years is that we as a family, we have stood by the Prime Minister. Let me just remind you what happened. 5 years ago, and in 1 month after that operation, Shuvu Achim, at the end of the mission, Hadar got a week's vacation, and he met his fiancée, and he proposed to her. It was right before the operation started. And then he called Leah, my wife, and she said, "Are you crazy today? You're proposing right before you're going out?" And he said, "We decided today because we've reached a conclusion that we have to create something happy for the family and for Am Yisrael." He had 5 days. We were able to even hold an engagement party in Gan Eital. We planned everything. He went back into the Givati, elite corps, and he was killed on the 1st of August. During the ceasefire, by the way, humanitarian ceasefire, the Hamas ambushed the elite corps of Givati, and as we know, our soldiers do not shoot during ceasefire. They ambushed them. They killed the commander of the Sayeret, Commander Harel, and Liel Gidoni was the sergeant, and Hadar, and they kidnapped him. And in fact, since then, he's been held by Hamas. Now, what has happened in these past 5 years? For 36 hours, he had the status of a missing in action or kidnapped soldier. This was on Friday. On Motzei Shabbat, they came to us and they said as follows: "I think it's time all of Israel heard this. We have forensic proof that Hadar is no longer among the living, but we were not able to bring Hadar." Now, the question that I was challenged with, me and my family, whether we have to do what everybody, by the way, advised us to do, was to call out to the media that Hadar is alive and he has to be brought back, and to exert pressure on the government to bring him back. Or this would mean that would be giving a gift to Hamas. Because as you know, I'm actually the cousin of the Minister of Defense, and Hadar is the cousin of the Minister of Defense. So could you imagine this Motzei Shabbat that Hamas would have proclaimed that they are holding, hostage, live hostage, who's the cousin of the Minister of Defense? Could you imagine the picture of victory they would have had? We wanted to prevent that from happening. And that is why we were willing to accept the fact that he's missing the action, but he is believed to be dead. We accepted a funeral because we had to bury the findings that were found in that tunnel. And in that room, what we call the Cheder Chachamim, again, those rooms where Hadar and his twin brother used to learn. In that room, the Minister of Defense, veGaon, he showed up. He was a Minister of Defense back then. And Rana Bar Vivai, who was the head of Human Resources in IDF, and Rafi Perez, who was the chief military rabbi, and everybody said, we give you that guarantee that we will bring him to Jewish burial. This was 5 years ago and a month. During the first meeting that we had with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who is also the Prime Minister now, and who's also the Minister of Defense at the moment, he said to us, every deal that has to do with Gaza, anything that has to do with rehabilitation of Gaza, upgrading Gaza, everything will be on condition that the soldiers be brought back. That is what they told us, and we adhere to that way. Who deviated from it? I have no idea where they went. I mean, I know where they went, but who deviated from this route? The leadership of the State of Israel, Prime Minister of Israel, in the State of Israel, which is a democratic state, that the army is the military of the people, that the Prime Minister gives the command for the soldiers to go to war. He has to bring them back. And the entire leadership, they all decided to just give up on these soldiers. And I am also talking about the spiritual leadership. I'm also talking about the religious leadership. Try and go through your memories. Try and recollect who were the rabbis in the past 5 years. Which rabbi said that Hadar has to be brought to Jewish burial? Including Hadar's own teachers in Bnei David, in the Beit Midrash. Hadar studied there for 2 years. Who of those rabbis ever said? There were a few. I could count them on one hand. What did they do? Nothing. Did we give up on that mitzvah? Yes. The answer is yes. Are we willing to give up on that mitzvah? No. The answer is no. We can't fathom that because we cannot give up on the mitzvah called Chesed Shel Emet, which is the first and foremost mitzvah. It sets the standards for all other mitzvot. It's a top priority. We can't even go there. It's a very slippery slope. And we, the Goldin family, are there at the edge of the abyss, and we are trying to prevent the slippery slope from happening. So I hope you understand what I'm talking about. And I want you to understand that, again, we have hurt, we have damaged the heritage, the national consciousness, because there's only one conclusion and consequence of this, and that is succumbing to Hamas. And it has been expressed in Ashkelon. You remember in Ashkelon, during the election campaign, the Prime Minister was up there on the stage while missiles were dropping on him, and they had to quickly take the Prime Minister away. How could this be? Okay, we know the verses from the Kina of David. Don't tell this in the outskirts of the Gad. Don't tell it in Plishtim. Meaning we have come back to those times of Shaul, when Shaul died, and David says, don't tell what has happened in Gad. Don't tell it to our enemies. How does he begin this eulogy? Hatzvi Israel. He asks a question. Are we cowards? He asks. What has happened? This is the situation in which we are at the moment. And this stems directly from the fact that we did not fulfill our promise and the covenant that we took upon ourselves. We did not fulfill the mitzvah of burying a person, honoring the dead. We are succumbing to Hamas. For the past 5 years, we have been doing it. In the past 2 years, the Goldin family, We actually, every single Friday, it's at 12:30, we stand in Adarta Chet Shachor. It's a monument. It's in the Ziv junction next to Haifa. There is another group that stands every Friday in Tzfat. And hopefully there will be other groups that will stand at certain junctions to protest. We don't want to forget these two guys. They are held by the enemy. We would like to exert pressure on the enemy. We would like to force the enemy to bring them back home. Now look what has happened to us in the past 5 years. And I imagine you're all saying in your heart what I'm about to say out loud. When we talk with those people, when we talk with the leadership, when we talk with the heads of the security forces and the ministers, all use the same language, the language of Hamas. We actually have internalized and have suddenly adopted the jargon of Hamas. We suddenly talk of the price, the cost. What will be the price of this, the cost? We talk about a humanitarian crisis in Gaza, and we talk about whether there will be war or not. So these, again, are other concepts, but I'm not going to tell you all of those, all the terms that come up. But these are three terms that are used by terrorists. They are not terms that should be used by a sovereign state. They are not terms that should be used by human beings. What does it mean? What is the price of something? What does it mean that a group of 30,000 terrorists, that again nothing is sacred to them, set what the price is for the state of Israel, what the state of Israel will pay and not? What is this? This is the underworld. This is the mafia. Who sets the price for us? We will set the price for the enemy. Let the enemy pay the price for not giving back our soldiers or for hurting our citizens. We have to set the price. So stop talking about the price, because you are using the terminology used by Hamas. And I think you all know that, again, when you use the terminology used by the enemy, we're actually succumbing to Hamas. When people talk about a humanitarian crisis and terrorists, yes, terrorists create humanitarian crises. That is true. We solve one crisis, they create a new humanitarian crisis and another humanitarian crisis. And as we continue to solve humanitarian crises, that is how we keep fortifying and strengthening Hamas. I don't know if you're aware of this, but in this entire, complex, this complexity of the elections, do you know that they are building a hospital in Hamas territory for Hamas terrorists? The state of Israel is investing in that hospital. The structures that were on the Syrian border, okay, that hospital are now next to Rafiah, where my son is being held, and we are building a hospital. How could that be? You can't say, to bring these two boys home. We can say that it's not humanitarian until you don't bring back these two soldiers, these citizens. You will get no humanitarian aid whatsoever. It would solve the problem. My wife and I have been running around for the past 2 years. I think some of the people here also met us in the UN. We brought people from the UN. We brought people from the United States so that they would support this demand. And the state of Israel had no representative there. For 3 weeks now, I've been trying to publish an article in Yediot Achronot. It will finally be published tomorrow. Please read my article. Be published tomorrow. Read the facts. UN is ready. USA is ready. Israel is not there. That is that disorder that I talked of. That is the failure that I talked of. That something is rotten in the leadership. And the third point, when, again, threatening that there would be war, Hamas, again, launches missiles whenever it wants. And it threatens us with war. Do you know that about 2 months ago, when it was a Friday, I think, when we went to protest at one of the junctions, a young boy approached us. Every time somebody takes the microphone and talks, and he said, I want to take the microphone. He had a bar mitzvah a week earlier inside. And he said, I wanted to read the Haftarah. I read the Haftarah. I was actually waiting for sweet candy to be thrown. What happened? 560 missiles and mortar bombs dropped on me instead of candy. During that one Shabbat, if you recall, it was on down south. and they are threatening us with war. So what am I asking? I'm asking, let us go back to our original perceptions and our ideals that lie at the basis of our faith. And they also lie at the basis of our Zionist perception. We do not leave soldiers behind, wounded nor dead soldiers, or those that are alive. Because it is quite clear that those who can leave the dead in the battlefield, they will also leave a captive, a life captive in the battlefield. That's how it works. Okay? You have to deal with it immediately. And we have to go back, revert back to those values. And when you go out of here today, please help us. You have to help us. Because the fact that we, the Goldin family, okay, we are doing what we have to. We are fulfilling the mission. But this mission will not be fulfilled, as David HaMelech says, if the people do not understand what they are losing. And that is the main point that I wanted to convey to you today. I don't think we can hold such a discussion without saying something from Hadar. And of course, I would like to connect to Avinu Malkeinu. Hadar said many things. He did many things. Now you can call it maybe a slogan, but he actually said it a few times. We even have a recording of his at the end of the officers' course. He was interviewed by the speaker of the IDF, and he said you have two opportunities, two choices in life. Two choices. You can easily deal with yourself, just do what you want to do, focus on yourself, or do great things. So many youth today actually internalize this mission, this slogan. But he also wrote it for himself. He wrote a commentary at the age of 19 on the book Mesilat Yesharim, The Root of the Righteous. And we actually published it. He wrote it for himself. He never thought of publishing this commentary. So this is the book with Mesilat Yesharim, which was published about a year ago, and it became a bestseller in many places. And again, in the introduction, what he liked about the introduction of the Ramchal, who wrote Mesilat Yesharim, I think it's true for always. It's also true for now. Ramchal said, I'm not coming to say anything new. I am just coming to remind you what you all know and have simply forgotten. It's an understatement, right? Okay, you've forgotten. You don't really want to remember. So I want to remind you. That's what the Ramchal says. That is why Hadar loved the book, Mesilat Yesharim, and he wrote a commentary on it. And after he was killed, his friend suddenly brought the book, and we saw he wrote a commentary in the margins, and we turned it into a book to be learned in Chavruta. Let me just say something that is related to Avinu Malkeinu, it also relates to Rosh Hashanah. One of the things that really concerned Hadar, but he found the solution for this. He found the solution within the book of the Ramchal, the tension between fear and love. And of course it's related to the verse in the book of Dvarim, you Israel, what does God want of you? To fear God, to follow His path, and to love God, and to worship Him with all your heart and all your soul, and to fulfill His commandments. So this tension between the love of God and the fear of God, he wrote some amazing things about it. Because fear of God, it's not like regular fear to be scared of something. Because this awe, let's call it awe of God and love, they go hand in hand. That is why we say Avinu, our Father, which represents love, a father and son. And then we call him Malkeinu, our King, which is actually the awe of the King. If we can say Avinu Malkeinu in one breath, that means there is no tension, meaning it goes hand in hand. You could do it simultaneously. And just for this to be more clear, he actually created this table. Hadar drew this table. And the two last letters of Yir'ah is Aleph and Hey, or the first two letters of Ahava. And that is why it's actually one and the same thing. And this Rosh Hashanah that we just had, and again, as we prepare ourselves for Yom Kippur, Hadar wrote, what does God want of you? He says that the root, the inner root, comes before the action. That means after we build our awareness, our consciousness, and understand what we want to do, we have intent, we'll be able to do. So what is Avinu Malkeinu? Avinu is the kingdom of love, and Malkeinu is the kingdom of awe. That's what he wrote, Hadar. Meaning this person, my son who wrote this, we cannot leave him with the enemy. We have to bring him, and we have to bring Oron back home, and Ava Mangisto as well. And we have to bring them back, because by Torah and law we have to bring them back, and we have to teach the enemy what our values are, what national consciousness we have, where our core values lie and where we want to be. So it's true that we've had very difficult 5 years of famine, let's call it, of hunger, of lacking. But I think that everybody who will come out of here can help us somehow. And again, you can aid us in all sorts of ways. I will leave you my cell phone number. There is Facebook that's called Hadar Sheli. You can enter the page. There are WhatsApp groups called Hadar. You can join them. You can come to protest with us and stand. You can help in many ways. There's so much that can be done. Let me just say this again. This rotten situation, this disorder is something within Israeli society, and that is why we have to fix it right there in its root. That is why we are sitting here. Because Hadar, when he started explaining again the power and the strength in the book of the Ramchal that he wrote a commentary about, he took the name of the first chapter. It was called Chovat Ha'adam Be'olamo, the obligation of man in his world. That's the name of the first chapter in Ramchal's book. That's where you begin, that's where you have to end. Shana Tova. Hopefully we'll do great things. Thank you.